So it is really nice to be here in San Francisco, but I can't say San Francisco. It is nice to be here in this city where they make computers and the ground moves sometimes. I flew in here through. I flew in here on it was an Alaska Airlines flight, except it's a big skyboat that is owned by a company that will let you ride on it if you pay the money. And I connected through Seattle, or I connected through Seattle, but I can't say Seattle, of course. So I connected through a city that's north of here, where they also make computers, and they sometimes make the screens turn blue. And also this is I really like I'm from the east, and it's fun connecting through all the cities up here. I like visiting the Northwest because it's a really cool area, very pretty, lots of trees, and everyone is always moving out here, moving up there, because it's a little municipality which is only slightly marred by the omnipresent volcanological disaster threat. So it's a really nice city to live in, but sometimes fire comes out of the mountains and everyone dies. Anyway, and I flew here. I flew on an Airbus A321 airliner, but I can't say any of those. So it's a narrow body airliner, which I can't even say narrow body. It's one of those planes that has 3 seats and then 3 seats, and then you can walk down in between them. And it has a wing, and on the wing are 2 pushers. It's also one of those planes where when you're sitting in it, you can watch a movie. And it actually, the movie that they were playing on the skyboat that I flew here on was a movie whose name I can't say, although it's named after a crack in the ground here, a place where the ground is broken. I heard from some ground doctors articles who said that this movie didn't get some things right, although it but it was a fun introduction. It was fun to see what this city was like before I got here. It was not right about everything, but I still had fun watching it. It had I always like it starred The Rock, and actually that's okay. But so my book Thing Explainer. I made diagrams of things, and then I had to label them using simple words, which meant, rethinking how I described everything. Starting with this, it started with this diagram, which I posted to xkcd.com. And it is a diagram of the Saturn V rocket, or the U.S. space team's Upgoer 5. And then it was so much fun to label this that I decided to keep doing more of these, and then eventually do a whole book of them. But the actual start for this, by the way, a bit of trivia here was really a game called Kerbal Space Program. Awesome. So it sounds like there are some KSP players here. But for those who are not familiar, this is a game where you make rocket ships, and then by just sticking parts together and then putting them out on a launch pad and then pressing go. And it's really that easy to make a rocket, and also, if you do that, the rocket will almost always explode right away. But then you can keep messing with it, and eventually you get a rocket that doesn't explode, and it's really how the space program works. And so if you're playing playing Kerbal Space Program, you find that you make a rocket and then you launch it and it explodes as always, and then you say, okay, well, I need to add more struts or and mess with it, and I'm one of those people who never likes to delete anything or get rid of anything. So every time I would make a change, I would need to I would be like, well, I should keep the old rocket around just in case I need it. I don't. And so I would always need to give the new one a new name. And so I would start with this is Eagle 1 or whatever. This is the Apollo. This is the Chariot of the Gods, whatever. And I gave them all these majestic names, and every time but you keep on building these rockets, and you launch them, and they immediately turn and veer straight down and explode. And then after a while, you start feeling that the majestic names are maybe aiming a little too high. And so I started getting tired of giving them cool names. And I started giving them kind of angry or really dumb names. And so I would just be like, this is Rocket. And then, all right, this is Flying Car. This is the Space Tube. And then I started trying to sort of one-up myself with dumber and dumber names. And then when I finally hit Upgoer, I said, you know what? I cannot get any dumber than that. And then it was after I flew, and that one actually worked pretty well, so I ended up using it for quite a while as a general heavy lift rocket. And then after a while, I started thinking, I wonder if I could give all of the other parts of a rocket names that are just as stupid. And then I thought, okay, well, what if I have to only use simple words? Could I do that? And that is where I came up with the idea to dig up a Saturn V diagram and label all of the parts. And before we go on, I want to say my favorite part on here was, and despite working at NASA, I did not actually work on rockets in any capacity. I made robots avoid chairs in conference rooms. So I didn't really know a lot of these parts when I got started. And so I had always seen this sort of needly thing on the top. But until I sat down with a blueprint, I had never actually figured out what the heck is that thing. And it turns out that it is the launch escape system or launch abort system on different versions. Or as I call it, the thing to help people get away really fast if there's a problem and everything is on fire and they decide not to go to space. And it's just a little rocket stuck to the top, which has the nozzles, and I don't know why I find this so entertaining, but it has these little nozzles here on the rocket, but they can't point down because then they would just be pointed right at the capsule, so they just sort of point off to the side, which seems like a sort of a weirdly haphazard way. We put the rocket on top, so the engine, the exhaust goes down into the capsule. Oh, the capsule's in the way. Better just sort of aim off to the side. And so that thing, if there's ever, if something goes wrong, that thing fires and yanks the capsule up just hard enough that the people probably don't die from the acceleration, or at least they're about as likely, less likely to die from the acceleration than from the rocket burning under them. And then I got to describe, figure out how to talk about what the different tanks are full of. This is the part that full of stuff that they burn in lights before houses had power, and over here is the one that's full of the kind of air that once burned a big sky bag and people died. And someone said, and I couldn't say humanity, so humans. And so then I was thinking, what other materials can I label like this? And so one of the, because it was fun just figuring out how do you describe each of these things. And so I tried I figured, well, let's just start with all materials, the periodic table. And so some of these are drawings. My favorite, though, is the one thing on here, gold. Which is the one element that just totally makes the list on its own merits.